Curtis is ready. Looks like Curtis is ready, so we'll call our meeting to order. Okay, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Roger.
I move that we move public comments ahead of us going into closed session.
Support. Okay. Motion support for the amended agenda. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. We have the agenda. Roll call. Completed? It's done. Next will be Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, excuse me, down to communications. First, we're going to consider a resolution to receive a communication from the Arbor Day Foundation regarding Alma's Tree City USA designation for 2024.
Approval of minutes.
Oops, I'm sorry. Sorry, Roger. Approval of the minutes. We'll entertain a motion for the approval of March 25, 2025 regular session meeting. Support. Okay, there we go. Comments or questions on those? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Now, consideration of a resolution to receive communication from the Arbor Day Foundation regarding Alma's Tree City USA designation for 2024.
So moved.
Support.
Motion support. Background or any color you want to add?
39 years, so next year is the big 4-0, so.
4-0.
Look at you, Eric, knowing this year before somebody.
Before somebody asks you. We talked about it staff, so yeah. Oh yes, it's 39 years.
39 years. Yay. Yeah. Good deal. Anybody else have comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion is received. Thank you. Resolutions. First up, we're going to consider a resolution ratifying the investments in the following city funds. Before us, we have 3 CDs, $250,000 apiece at 3.85%, all at Commercial Bank. Your pleasure.
Move to approve. Support.
Okay, we have motion support. Comments or questions? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Or approved, excuse me. Next, we're going to consider a resolution to authorize the use of North State Street from the north side of Superior Street to Downey Street, as needed, for the Alma Farm Market each Saturday from 6:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. beginning June 1st, 2025, and running to October 25th, 2025.
Move to adopt. Support.
Okay, we have motion support. Any comments? Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Now we are to consider a resolution approving the Elma Highland Festival Committee's request to operate their entertainment tent on the campus of Elma College from 7 p.m. to midnight on Friday, May 24th, from 11 a.m. to midnight on Saturday, May 25th, and from noon to 6 p.m. on Sunday, May 26th, pursuant to order number 695, which allows the City Commission to approve the 3-day variance to the noise ordinance.
Move to approve.
Support.
Motion support. Are there any comments or questions? Anything new?
No, nothing new, it's just to allow for the amplified music and anything else that's going on at the entertainment tent, so.
Okay. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Now, consideration of a resolution. I'm sorry, what?
No, nothing. It was for the minutes.
That wasn't for the minutes? All right. Consideration of a resolution declaring noxious weeds a public hazard and a nuisance pursuant to Section 22-62 and 22-63 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Elma, and that all affected property owners be notified to abate such nuisances.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any comments or questions? Again, nothing new.
It's that time of year. Grass will be growing, and as the previous, we'll send out a letter to those folks at 10 inches or more the first time. After that, we'll just send in the mower once you get your first warning. So,
Okay. As it has been.
as a hit back.
Yeah. So all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. Now, to consider a proposed resolution proclaiming April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day within the City of Elma.
Move to adopt.
Support.
Motion and support. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving right along, we're to consider a resolution to approve a change order to a request for purchase to Michigan Department of Transportation, which was previously adopted on June 25th, 2024, for Elma's portion of the Pine Avenue reconstruction project, amending the total from $2,432,000 to $2,811,581.70.
Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Comments or questions? Background?
It's just the updated bid price when we signed the contract originally with them to go out to bid. That was the estimated engineered estimate amount. Obviously, when the bid came back in, that's where we're at now, so.
So it doesn't change our budgeting, anything?
No, we're all covered. We're all covered, yeah.
Great. Anybody else? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. Consideration of a resolution to approve an agreement for price reductions on city-owned lots in Gemstone Fields subdivision.
Move approval.
We have motion support. Comments or questions?
Again, we have 5 left out there. This is to knock it down from 12.5 down to just under 10 per lot, and to see if that moves those last 5 in the next year. If not, we'll come back next year and see if we need to lower it again, so.
Okay. So we talked at one point about stipulating that if we're going to sell these at a reduced price, that we require a building to be constructed within a certain period of time.
Yes.
Is that?
That would be part of the agreement. We would not sell the property unless someone's going to build on it.
So
Yep.
more than just intentions, though.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah. We'd have to. I mean, I've had individuals ask about buying lots next to them.
Just for speculative purposes.
That and/or just to keep it empty.
Yeah.
And that's not the point. We need homes, and we got to, every time someone builds a house, those tap fees go into a water and wastewater fund, and everything else that comes along with that, so.
Okay. Anybody else have comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Consideration of a resolution to approve a change order to request for purchase to RCL Construction Company, which was previously adopted on January 24, 2024, amending the total from $734,800 to $693,503. Your pleasure.
Move approval.
Support. Got a motion and support.
This is our final closeout for the changeover from the chlorine gas to the bleach. It is, even with this change order going up, we did go down initially. So we are under budget. Our original budget amount was $810,000. So we are under budget with the overall project, so.
Yeah, this is 40,000. This is 40,000 less, isn't it?
Yes.
For 400.
That doesn't happen.
It was 810 was the original bid amount, and then when we came in, we were able to drop it down to that 693. And at the end of the project, everything's, said and done.
Perfect.
It's 73800.
So the final project was 734,800?
Yes.
That's back.
So this is back.
This is going down.
From 734,800 to
It's the
693.
original is 734, we're dropping it to
Oh,
693.
I'm sorry, dude.
So the final price is
It's
693,
lower than.
yes.
Good,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking.
Okay, sorry, dude.
How I read it too, and then when you said it's more,
No, because our original bid amount was 800, and, what we
Yeah.
estimated that was 810, so I'm sorry, that's my
Okay.
mistake.
If you-
All right.
If you wanted more background.
do you want to give us more background? Dave?
Yeah, if you want, just because.
We always want more
confusing. If you remember back, last summer, before this got up and going, right at the beginning, we did a change order to reduce the contract amount a little over 50,000 with the tank. The constructor of the tank, to try to get it to that size to fit in the room, and it was, it's to change it from a UV resistant tank. There's no windows in there, so we saved money doing that. That was one of the conversations we had, is that the tank lasts as long. And anyway, we saved money on that. So that was change order number 1, to reduce the cost. And then this change order bumps the cost up a little bit because of when we had the tank out, we put some chemical resistant paint on the roof, on the I-beams that are in that room. That was not a part of the original project scope. And the way that tank is oriented in the room, we had to move a heater around and a downspout, that type of thing, and then some gas detectors, we relocated that. So it's part of this change order too. So there wasn't that increase, but overall the project is still down in cost.
Okay, good. Last chance for questions. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Next, reports of officers, boards, and committees. Commissioners may receive the following reports by one resolution, or any commissioner may remove any item within the section for individual discussion and vote. Before us tonight, we have the 2024 Water Quality Report, the Finance March 2025 Report, the Elma Police Department March 2025 Report, the Elma Transit March 2025 Report, and the City Manager's Report.
Full city manager?
Pleasure to pull. City Managers. And I'd like to pull the transit as well, if we could.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Move we approve 1 through 3. Support.
Here, a motion of support for 1 through 3. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. We've received the first 3. Now we'll entertain a motion on 4, I guess.
Move to approve number 4.
Support.
Okay, we have motion support. And I just had a question, looking at the figures, the way I was reading things there. It looks like ridership has been declining over the last 3 years. I guess I just would like some more background on what's going on.
That's nothing. Okay,
Well, if you just look at the numbers on all this thing is sideways. But anyway, if you look at that chart with 3 years, I believe we're seeing declining ridership, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I don't know if there's something going on, the numbers are incorrect, or if we're counting things differently, but
Where are you seeing that, Greg?
on that chart with 3 years worth of data,
Turn it sideways.
yeah, it's sideways on our reports. Well, like on the bottom, that 2023 chart, total ridership is 79,448, and then goes to 76,000 in the year above that, and we're 51,000 the first 3 quarters of this year, which pushes us on track for another decline. So it just seems that with the additional
I didn't notice
slipper.
that.
I
So,
will.
yeah, I
We'll check with Brett.
don't expect an answer tonight or
I will
anything,
check
but I
with
did
Brett,
want to
get back
just
you
bring up the
guys.
question.
So we'll follow up with you next meeting.
Okay.
Just quick addition across the bottom, so those numbers look roughly right. Just doing quick math in my head.
Yeah, I just wonder if we changed methods of calculation or what's, I don't know.
Good point.
I will, I'll sit down with Brett and we'll be back with you
Okay.
next month here, or next meeting.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Anybody else have questions on that one, on the transit report? If not, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we'll entertain a motion for the city manager's report.
All right.
So moved.
Sorry, I was going to jump right into it.
Yeah, I think we were done.
We got a lot to do.
We're good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion of support? I think I
Yes.
heard it, but you got it? Okay. Motion of support. Go, Eric.
All right.
Clock's ticking. Come on.
That's right. That's right. Chamber community celebrations taking place May 1st. So if any of the commissioners would like to attend, please let me know and we'll get you a ticket for that. It's been great the last few years because we're done in a couple hours. So it isn't like the old days was like an Oscar. So we're going out for 4 hours. So if anybody would like to go, let me know and we'll get you a ticket. I'm pleased to announce we did receive a $12,000 grant with us and our other law enforcement partners from the Community Foundation, the Clyde and Maud Metzner Memorial Fund, basically to cover our records management system that speaks to from here down to the county prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office is upgrading to the CREPL system, And we have the core system here. To get those two to talk together, we need a conversion to make that happen. It's $12,000 for that conversion. The grant covers that, and then there's a $2,000 fee to keep core in connection with the new system down at the county, and that $2,000 will be paid for between us here at PD, St. Louis, Gratiot County Sheriff's Department, and the Breckenridge PD Department. So thanks to Chief Overla and everyone in the other departments for going after those funds to get that done. From a practical standpoint, this saves our officers from running paperwork back and forth to the prosecutor's office throughout the week. Road construction meter update. Obviously, we're well underway with Pine Avenue. It's moving along for the most part. Things have been moving fairly well from a standpoint of getting people in and out of the area. There are times where folks are, frustrated, but it's a big construction project. The area is moving slow. We're moving slow, like we talked about, that water sand that's there, so it's a little bit tougher area to work in. We've had some water breaks there that the contractor's been dealing with, and we have heard from some citizens, calling about, hey, my water's off, that sort of thing. So we're working on with the contractor there to make sure that they're notifying folks when that happens, but they don't leave site if the water's off, that make sure it comes back on before they leave for the day. Coming right up next week, Moyer Avenue gets started on Monday, the 14th, as well as Charles Avenue. That's going to be a big one. People have been anxious about getting that road reconstructed for a while, but now we'll be underway with it. So that is going to be a major inconvenience as well from coming in north and south from that area of the neighborhood as well. From the meter standpoint, knock on wood, we're doing fairly well. I was surprised when we got the numbers of the 3,276 meters that we have across the city. A total of 2,815 have been completed. That's leaving 461 meters to go. And we've contacted everyone in town at least 4 times. That includes the door hangers that we did put out. And the first month's bill with the extra fee in there for the $100 fee for not getting their meter changed out has gone on there. That has sparked a couple of folks to come in, and as long as they get it scheduled, we waive that fee to get them. That's all we're after, is to get folks to get those water meters changed out. And just as again, another practical note for our staffing, we've had a meter reader that walks from house to house to do that. Usually takes about 2.5 weeks, sometimes 3 depending. We can do the whole community in less than 2 hours when we're driving the truck around. So, and it saves on issues of workers' comp because it gets cold, icy, people out there walking. So all the way around, a good thing. So that's all I have for you tonight, because we have a proposed budget for the FY26, and so we also have a presentation from Friends of the Library. So,
Okay, who has the first question?
I don't have any. I think it's going well with the projects. There's big projects, but like I said before, we're thankful to have roads to fix. So everybody has to have patience. There'll be nice roads when they're done. We all can work together, take a little more time on our way places.
Yeah. Does the Charles project require the ripping up of the end of Iowa there on Charles, or is that just done? Where Iowa came into Charles, they repaved Charles for that intersection.
That'll be torn up.
it'll be milled down and then repaved.
The radius will be putted. There's a matches, but we'll pull the radius to match with the new one on Charles next.
I was just curious.
Should be minimal on the Iowa though.
Okay. With that, we'll entertain I guess we have a motion. So all those in favor of receiving the city manager report, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is received. Thank you. Next up on our new business, we have a presentation from the Friends of the Elma Public Library. Are there indeed friends here at the Elma Public Library? We see one at least.
Hi, I'm Susan Hunter. I'm chair of the Alma Library Friends, and thank you for giving us a few minutes on the agenda. Although there's a lot of uncertainty and scary news going on these days, I'm happy to report that for the next few bright, shining minutes, I have only good news to report. I'm going to hit a few highlights, and then we have a very short film that I think you'll all enjoy. Our first event last year was the 2024 Open House, and it was attended by over 400 people. That was in part because of Joe Butcher and his Republic trucks, because Alma does love it some trucks. And it was really fun. I learned a lot about the history of Alma. I think a lot of other people did. And the friends also learned about how to and not to cook 400 hot dogs for people, right, Diane? Yes. The second big event we had was the used book sale. That was our second time. And we raised $10,781, which is $2,000 more than we raised the year before. And I want to give a little shout out to someone all of you know. I think Jeff Nasons contributed vintage comic books that accounted in large part for that increase, as well as helped in bringing people, we think, to the library that might not have come to the sale, because our numbers were up from 2,300 the first year to 3,600 last year. That's a lot of people coming through the library in 5 days. We were also really happy to discover that the book sale not only makes money, it saves money for the library, because when the books that come in are in really good shape and the library needs the books, they can be pulled out and cataloged and put on the shelves. So that helps extend the library book buying budget, and that was something I didn't realize Lori was doing that. She's always looking for good ways to use the funds. So right now we are accepting donations of gently used books, DVDs, puzzles, games, and comic books. So if you have any, just bring them on down. In November, we hosted a program on the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It happened to be on the 49th anniversary of the event, and that was really popular. We had to add an extra program, and even though there was a tornado in the middle, lots of people still came out, and that was a really fun event. During the year, the Friends help out on an as-needed basis with library programs like the holiday photo event or story time with Miss Jessica, which is expanding exponentially, so we try to get there to do a little helping. And Gary and I have helped, and I would like to say that I'm not bragging, but I think that my moves during the scarf dance are legendary. We used some of the money that we've raised this year to purchase 6 wingback chairs for the library and some side tables, and we put 2 in front of the fireplace, 2 behind, and 2 in the history room. And we also combined some of the book sale money with donations that were given earmarked in memory of Lynn Ludy. And we used those funds to buy 2 book carousels with nice donation plates on them. And the Alma Library Friends website is up and running, and you can check it out at almalibraryfriends.org. And that's where we post our agendas, our minutes, the newsletter, photos, events that are coming up. You can sign up to get on the newsletter from the site, and it needs some more depth brought to it, but it's doing pretty well. Oh, and we also have a Facebook page for the Friends, so if you're on Facebook, we'd really like it if you would like and follow us so that we can get more popularity among the world. The library already has great programming for kids and teens, so the Friends decided we wanted to develop some programs that were more adult-oriented. In January, we offered free chair fitness classes for seniors, and those were so popular that we offered them again in February, and there was demand for more, but the Smith Library meeting room is also in big demand, so we couldn't schedule any until July, and we'll try it again and see if people like it in the heat of summer as much as they did in the cold of winter. In February, we hosted a really fun wine tasting event for the community. About 100 people attended. Vandemark Farm and Vineyard presented their wines. And it was really, tons of people came up to say how much they enjoyed it. Well, maybe not tons, but at least 5 people. So it's sort of surprising how much a glass of wine can enhance a meeting. Maybe you guys will ever try that.
Bring that up.
In March and April, we offered a series of 4 classes for seniors that covered online privacy, artificial intelligence, scam prevention, and some tips and tricks for smartphones, and that was also well received. Next up is our 2025 open house, April 23rd from 3:30 to 6, and I hope you'll all be able to come. The theme is a giant thank you to the community for voting 20 years ago by a 2-to-1 margin in favor of funding the library expansion. To celebrate paying off that bond, we're going to have a bond burning outside the library with the assistance of the fire department, so we don't get too carried away. And following that, everyone's invited inside to enjoy refreshments, chat with friends, and bask in the wonders of our beautiful library made possible by the support of our very generous community. And we'll also have the very short film that I'm going to show now, or that Curtis, I guess, is going to make sure that it's shown. This will be playing on a loop during the open house.
You ready for it?
Ready?
Fingers crossed we have this working. I've played with it for a while today. On my IT budget sometimes.
Hey, over here! No, over here! Are you here for the duck race? Or just flying south for the winter? Stick around. You have a great view. You are in Alma, Michigan, Scotland, USA. There are a lot of things to see and do in Alma. We have a nationally accredited liberal arts college. A community thing. Churches and houses and a duck race on the Pine River. Hey, no what? That ducky. Our oil refinery shut down. Some factories have moved away. We have some great businesses. But some downtown businesses have closed. Not a happy pond. But through it all, we still know how to dance. These are the Pine River Dancers, the pride of Alma. Makes me proud to be a duck. We are proud of that too. The problem is that our library is just too small to fit everyone in. I have room for 2 in non-fiction. Inside, it is difficult to get a book. It can get feathers flying. Some people try to get their own book. Watch out! Some
Sometimes the library is used for public meetings, one meeting after another, after another, after another, after another. After another, after another, after another. Whew! And there is one restroom. We take turns. Hey, don't forget the Northern! But Alma has some big plans. Expand the library. Room to read. Room to study and learn. Room to explore. More room. More space. Room to sit and think. It is our dream to build an addition to the library that reaches out towards the river. We want to keep learning afloat, but to pay for it, you just can't put it on my bill. We need your help. We can do it if we all stick together. Please support the library expansion project. Give us a reason to dance with joy here in Alma, Michigan.
Not this ride, Roland.
So what year was that?
Last week.
2004, I think.
Yeah, and that was used to, promote the village. And I think, and it won a prize, didn't it, Brian? Yes. For being one of the best library things. So we will have that playing on a loop. And then, Gary, could you pass out the flyers? We've got flyers for you all and business cards for the library friends. If you would like to share those, if you'd like to just use it yourself, if you'd like to frame it and put it on your desk. So that is the end of our presentation. But I'd like to say on behalf of the library friends, how much we appreciate the support of the community, which has made the library a true gathering place where everyone is welcome. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was all good news and a fun presentation, so thank you. All right, well, yeah. Our next presentation, the fiscal year 2026 annual city budget. Is that good to you?
No, Kurt's gonna take the lead on this.
Do we need to open this as a motion or? No.
No, we're just receiving a presentation, so.
This isn't as much fun.
You didn't bring any ducks?
No. I really gotta step up my game for next year's presentation if I'm gonna be following.
You gotta watch the scheduling, too, what you find.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna have to time this a little bit better next year.
Did we receive it? Oh, I'm
It is
sorry.
considered received because since
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay, all right.
Good?
Yeah, we're good.
Alrighty. Thank you for letting me follow that presentation. No fun videos, no ducks, no Roger dancing, but I will do my best to entertain for the next one. Roger can get up a little bit.
Yeah, right.
That's on him. I'm not asking anything here, so.
Floor space here.
We'll see. The cameras just wouldn't work through. So, yeah, it seems like we just did this. And hard to believe that we're back here again for another budget presentation, but here we are to give you the preliminary. This is the kind of the first step of the budget process season, the preliminary budget for the FY 25-26 season. So just as a kind of a quick refresher, we have 22 funds total in the city, 12 of which are actually, the budgets are approved by the city commission. The others are either pass-through entities or approved by other governing boards. So we'll talk about the 12 that we are responsible for here. Millages for this year, good news for all of you listening. City millages will be going down this year. So the only change this year is the library debt millage, as we just talked about. The final library debt payment will be made in May, so we are officially done paying off the library millage. So we will see a 0.75 reduction in the millages that go to the city this year. So the good news to start off, so. General fund revenue, those are our different categories of revenue that we have for the general fund. Basically, we have two major sources of revenue, taxes and intergovernmental revenue, which is mostly state revenue, a little bit of federal revenue, a little bit from other municipalities, but the majority of that is state revenue. That's 80% of our budget is in taxes and intergovernmental revenue. The 11% is internal service charges, so that's not revenue to the city as a whole, that's revenue to the general fund, because that would be expenses that are incurred in the general fund that get charged out to other funds throughout the year through internal service charges. So for things like finance, for HR, for engineering, those costs that get incurred in the general fund, but then get charged out to the other funds within the city. So it's revenue to the general fund, but it's not revenue to the city because it's the city paying itself essentially. So, and then we have about 9% of the rest of the revenue is in licenses, permits, fines, forfeitures, investment income, rents, and miscellaneous revenue. So that is kind of how our revenue breaks down, and this is very consistent year over year for the most part. You look at our general fund revenue trends, if it wasn't for a little bit of a blip in 2024, this would be a very consistent looking chart. 2024, we received almost 1.2 million in revenue. Most of that was the ARPA money. So that kind of put a little bit of a kind of spike in our trends here, but if you kind of take that, and we also had a little bit in 2023, we had a little bit of extra revenue that was CARES Act money that came through. So you take away those two kind of one-off miscellaneous spikes, it's been a pretty consistent year-over-year trend in revenue for the last, even going back 10 years, but this chart just shows the last 6. General fund revenue by category, again, you can kind of see huge spike in that intergovernmental revenue like we talked about. Other than that, most things staying fairly consistent year over year. Again, some of the other revenue are some miscellaneous one-time things that kind of spike up here and there. Investment income the last couple of years has really taken off thanks to a couple of things, mostly the rates just being a lot higher. We're starting to see those tailor off just a little bit, but still significantly higher than what they were for the 10 years prior to COVID. So yeah, trends are, again, things are really consistent. Nothing's really a major surprise on the revenue side. Just kind of talk about trends. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a 32% increase in the general fund, so that's an average of 3.2% annually. Really, the last couple of years, because of ARPA money and because property taxes have increased more than normal, we've seen a higher spike in the last couple of years. Typically, we're more around the 2% range year over year. Again, the last couple of years have kind of thrown that average a little bit up, which has been a positive thing, getting some additional revenue in for the general fund. Again, on the property tax side too, typically we see about a 1.5% to 2% increase year over year, but over the past 10 years, it's actually at 2.89 because the last couple of years have been closer to 5%. So again, nice spikes, whether those are sustainable, whether those are just one-time things or the new normal, I would lean probably towards more of they were kind of anomalies, and we should probably look more at historical trends and say that we can probably count on closer to that 1.5% on the tax side, about 2% on the general fund side. If we continue to see a little bit more, that's great, and we hope to see that. But again, with the intergovernmental revenue, we've had a couple of one-time payments the last couple of years, a couple of some extra influx of money, and in interest income. Last year alone, we made more in interest income than we did 2017 to 2023 combined. So again, great. Love that we're doing it. I'd love to tell you that I can keep doing that, but I can't control rates. I can only control how much we invest. So I still think it's going to be better than what it was, but I don't think it's going to be, I think we had an anomaly spike the last year or two. So when we talk about sustainability, I wouldn't want to count on that kind of interest income as a consistent source of revenue, just because, like I said, that was I really don't think we're going to see 5.5% interest rates from an investing standpoint as a regular thing going forward, and if so, we've probably got other things to talk about. So really, as far as increasing revenue, really, we don't have a lot of control over the state revenue we get other than applying for grants when they come up. Increasing the tax base is really the most sustainable thing to look at as far as in the future of how do we continue to build that tax base. One thing that we've seen trending kind of in a negative direction, and I say it negative just from a funding source way, is we have seen with the new rules with the veterans exemptions. A couple years ago, the city lost about 29,000 in income from veterans exemptions. This year it was almost 95,000. So unlike the personal property tax breaks that the businesses get, that the state then funds us through a different model, there is no replacement funding for these veterans exemptions. So again, want to be very clear, very supportive of veterans, very supportive of, I'm not against that, but just as a reality, the more and more those increase, unless the state has a way to subsidize those revenue losses, those are revenue losses directly out of our funds. And I mean, 90,000 in 1 year in revenue loss on property taxes for just that exemption alone is significant, and something that we have to consider how that's gonna, if that continues to trend that way, how is that gonna impact our general fund? So again, supportive, don't wanna talk negatively, but it is something as a concern that we are seeing in across the state. All treasurers, we've been having lots of meetings about what that does to, what that's gonna do to our budgets if there is no revenue replacement for those funds, so. That takes us to the revenue for the general fund. We'll get into the expenses. We have these 7 main categories, and then there are departments within these categories. We'll kind of run through these kind of real fast. Expenditure assumptions that we used for all of these departments are proposed cost of living adjustment of 3% for all of our non-union employees effective July 1st. We're also assuming every employee who is eligible for a step increase based on merit will receive that on their anniversary date. And we're assuming that we will see a 5.5% increase in our fringe benefits for healthcare, MERS pension payments, etc. So those are just the assumptions that we used when calculating all of our expenses on the personnel side. Community development, for the most part, is consistent other than a couple of major spikes, and those major spikes are capitals for parking lots. That's the 2024, 2025, those were when we did a couple of parking lots. When we do $1 million for the parking lots, they're gonna spike the trends a little bit, but really other than that, year over year, community development, especially from an operating standpoint, fairly consistent. Community safety has been trending upwards a little bit. Again, operationally staying fairly consistent across the board. A little bit of an increase in, especially the public safety, the code enforcement budget this past year and this upcoming year. A lot more legal fees and a lot more in time and efforts to do some of the code enforcement things that we've been talking about that's been a priority for the commission to do. So a little bit of an increase there, but other than that, for the most part, just mostly upticks based on increase in personnel costs in these departments. Other than, like I said, operationally, pretty stagnant, and capital's been pretty consistent. So that's kind of where we're at on the safety side. Executive administration, again, for the most part, fairly consistent. We see a couple spikes here and there. I also want to point out that this is gross expenses for the general fund, not necessarily net expenses. So if you look at like the human resources and engineering side, this is before we get reimbursed a portion of that from other funds. So like from the engineering side, like that wouldn't be the total number for, that wouldn't be the net number to the general fund, that would be the gross number of what the department costs, and then the net number would be net of the internal service revenue that gets brought in by the other funds when they do work for like the streets, the water department, the wastewater department, etc. So fiscal services is your finance and your assessing. And again, for the most part, we've seen, a dip for a couple of years. Both departments were saw less employees, so we saw a little bit of a dip, and those are starting to creep back up as we get a few more part-time hours. We haven't replaced a full-time position, but we do have some more part-time hours in there, so we see a little bit of an increase there. And then just with some of the turnover in this department, as people work their way up from a personnel standpoint, that's kind of what we've seen the last couple of years now that we're getting a little more stable and after a lot of turnover in the early part of the 2020s. Property maintenance, again, for the most part, fairly consistent. Really, the only spikes here are due to capital stuff for either the cemetery or the buildings and grounds. Operating wise, we've actually, both departments have really, these two departments have really stabilized from an operating standpoint and have not been seeing as much of an increase as we have in other departments. I think that's just kind of, especially from a public works side of things, it's just where they're putting their time. I think spending a little bit more time on streets and a little more time on water mains and stuff like that. It's just taking a little bit less time out of general fund time. So really the spikes here are just a couple of capital projects that we've done in buildings and grounds and cemetery. Other than that, operationally, we've stayed very stagnant in these departments. Then culture and parks, again, 2022 looks a little goofy for both of them. That was the year that we did essentially 2 library contributions, and because we didn't do any in fiscal year 2021, so that kind of gives the spike there, and then you see it kind of stabilized off from there. And then on the park side, 2022 is when, and a little bit in 2023 is when we put in the park restrooms and had a couple of capital projects there. So again, those spikes are really capital driven more than they are operationally driven. Operationally, Parks has increased a little bit, but not a ton, and it's mostly just because there's been a little bit more maintenance and stuff being done in the parks the last couple of years. I think part of that too was, if you remember back in like the 2021, 2022, even a little bit in 2023, we were having a little bit of trouble getting seasonals. So when we have less seasonals, a lot of the seasonal work is done either in the cemetery or in the parks. We've been fortunate that we've had some good seasonals the last couple of years, and gotten more seasonals, so that's been just allowing us to do a little bit more in these. So I think the operational costs are because we're doing more work, not necessarily that the same work is costing us more money. And then finally, transportation. Again, the 2 big areas here are sidewalks and streetlights, and those really only fluctuate when we have projects in those departments in a given year. Sidewalks, we used to kind of consistently do about $40,000 worth of projects year over year. We've kind of been talking, and with, because of some budget issues and because of just cost, we're really seeing where it makes more sense for us to do more like an $80,000 project every other year because of efficiencies and just it going further, and then also from a timing standpoint to be able to engineer and oversee and stuff like that. So I think that's something that we're going to be suggesting kind of moving forward, is instead of necessarily a $40,000 every year annual project, looking at more of like a biannual and a bigger project so that we can make those funds go further. So again, you're going to start seeing spikes in capitals just based on the timing of those. So the capital projects that we have in the general fund currently for this year is, we have election equipment, some municipal building improvements, patrol vehicle, sidewalk replacement. We didn't do one this year, so we're proposing 2 years worth next year. And then the $58,000 that we get from the marijuana revenue that the commission has said that they want to put towards parks capital projects. So that would give us to $246,000 in capital projects. We did have more in the original budget. The original budget that all the department heads submitted before we have a chance to look at it in a whole and review it was about $150,000 more than what we had for revenue projections. So some of the cuts that when the city manager and I and the department heads, we met and talked about, some of those did come, some of the cuts to get this to be a balanced budget did come from some capital projects. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the balanced budget here in a second. So yeah, so right now we're projecting $6.25 million in revenue and $6.25 million in expenses. So we do have a balanced budget, which is requiring no additional reserves out of the fund balance. There's the breakdown between personnel, non-personnel, and capital to get us to our balanced budget. And then kind of looking again at these trends, if you break it down, personnel is about 60, just over 68% of our total general fund budget. Operating is 27%, capital is 3.5%. Again, we've talked in the past, in an ideal world, in a perfect scenario of everything, a best practice target is, about a 60-30-10 split. So we're a little heavy in personnel, a little light in capital and operating, but we're still within, reasonable ranges. Like I said, a little bit higher in some, a little bit lower in others, but not necessarily like super out of left field in any one way, good or bad. When we do look at the trends, what we can see is the operating has been very, very stable. One of the things we talked about with department heads that I've been very pleased with is that, the cost of everything is going up. I mean, the cost of, fuel, paper, everything seems to be going up, but yet our operating budgets are actually like consistent, if not decreasing a little bit. So department heads have done a very, very good job at, when we have increases, finding ways to offset that without just adding to their operational budgets. Again, some things are out of our control, some budgets are easier to have some moving around than others, but if we actually look at the overall general fund, our operating expenses have stayed very, very consistent, which I think is a testament to the department heads doing a very good job at monitoring their budgets and finding ways when they have increases, not to just assume that, they're gonna get more money, but actually find ways to offset that without having to come and ask for budget amendments. Really, the increased cost over the last couple of years has been in personnel cost. We've been trying to give COLAs, we've been making sure people, when they're eligible and qualify for their merit increases, are getting their merit increases. We have seen increases in our health insurance. Our health insurance, we have been very fortunate. Our health insurance increases have been very good, especially compared to, I went to a meeting last weekend, and of all the, we had about 15 treasurers at that meeting. We were kind of all talking about comparing things. We had the lowest increase in our health insurance cost last year of anyone that I talked to. So again, testament to our employees for not abusing the system, taking advantage of it. They're doing a good job. I hope that's sustainable going forward. But even with that, we're still looking at, I think our health insurance increase this year was like 5.9%, which again, the average of everyone I talked to was double digits. So we'll take, I guess, the 5.9% and be okay with it. So yeah, really the increase here is in personnel, and then the kind of the side effect of that is, because when one goes up, something has to come down, is that our capital, as our total percentage of our budget, has been kind of decreasing the last couple of years. Just a breakdown of the percentage of the budget that's of each of those. Again, you really see very, very consistent unless you have a major capital project. For the most part, year over year, you can pretty much count on, we have a lot of consistency here. You know what you're spending. Some go up a little bit every once in a while, but nothing changes more than a couple percentage points here and there year over year. So, it's pretty consistent to say that unless we have a major change or a major capital project, this is about what you can expect to say. What percentage of your general fund dollars, where are they going? Again, this is pretty consistent year over year. So some of the questions we talked about concerning the general fund, that just to kind of, I don't think a lot of these we need answers on tonight, just kind of things to start thinking about as we plan on moving forward. I think the biggest one is our comfortability with bonding the parking lot replacement project. We've talked about that at goal setting. We've talked about that a couple times. I mean, the parking lots are in terrible shape. They need to be done. I don't doubt that. I just want the commission to understand that, if we're looking at a couple $100,000 a year allocated to capital, a bond payment's probably going to run you between $180,000 and $200,000. So if our capital budget's $300,000 and we're eating up $200,000 in a bond payment every year, it's just going to limit what we are able to do for the next 10 to 15 years until that bond's paid off, unless we find a way to offset against something else. And again, not saying we shouldn't do it. I just want to be considerate that that's going to be a large chunk of our capital project budget for the next 10 to 15 years if we bond it, and making sure that before we go ahead and do it, that we're comfortable with having that much of our budget for the next 10 to 15 years being taken up on that. So again, we're not looking for an answer tonight. That's not something we're starting tomorrow, but something that we do hope to start that process. If we are going to move forward with it, we want to move forward with that, this summer, with getting the bonding and stuff done, so that hopefully we can take it out to bid in the fall and have it be constructed in the spring. So again, just something to think about. We talked about this a little bit at goal setting too, about vacant positions. This budget did not fill any full-time positions. We did, in the original proposed budget, have filling one of the full-time positions that were vacant in the general fund, and we cut that back to a part-time position in the budget for now to help get us back to a balanced budget. Again, we have vacant positions. I think they're important. I'm not advocating against them. We also just talked about how our personnel costs are already high. So if you want to add positions, that's just going to make that gap even further. And I think it was brought up, I can't remember who brought it up at goal setting, but some of these vacant positions have been vacant now for 4 or 5 years. At what point are they no longer vacant positions? Are they eliminated positions? And if they are going to be eliminated positions, just allowing the departments that were affected by that to start to kind of understand that and be able to kind of rearrange in a way to see fit, so that not being led on a false hope that there's going to be hope on the horizon if there truly isn't. So again, not against it. I think all the positions are very important. In a perfect world, I think we would do it. But there's a cost to do it, and it would have to come from somewhere else, and I don't have a good suggestion right now where I would say just cut this to add this position. There really isn't a good, easy cut. So just something to kind of think about going forward. Is this our new reality as far as our staffing levels and our full-time equivalent employees in the general fund? Or if it is a priority to add back some of these positions, what can we look at to not do in order to afford those moving forward? And personnel costs are, capital costs are one-time costs other than the maintenance that goes with them, but the actual, personnel costs are ongoing forever. So they're not just they don't just affect one year's budget. If you add a position, it's gonna affect every budget from there on out and then some. So just again, something to consider. Kind of already touched on capital projects. This year we've had the lowest percentage of the budget going to capital than we have the last 5 years, and if personnel costs continue to grow, at what point, again, you can only, if you give to one, you have to take from another. If we continue to grow in either operating or personnel, what does that do to capital? If we want to do more capital, what can we take to keep that as a balanced budget? So, and with capital projects, we're seeing costs are they're not, I don't think they're what they were at their peak, but they're still incredibly high, and the dollar does not go nearly as far as it did a few years ago. So every capital project we do seems to cost more and more and more. So how do we make sure we have money available for that? And then I just had a note on here, this is a carryover note from last year about the cemetery costs. We are doing a rate study, working on that, hoping to have that still this spring to the commission, so we can kind of look at that from a revenue side. Like I said, from a cost standpoint, this was an area that for a few years had really been increasing heavily. It hasn't necessarily gone down, but it has stabilized a little bit the last couple of years. So I don't know enough about the services to tell you exactly why that's been the case. I can just tell you that it has. So again, I think we still look at that as a large portion of our budget that is one of the ones, even with it stabilizing, it is one of the ones, if we look at compared to 5-6 years ago to now, is costing us more and more and more. So just making sure we find, is it our rates? Do we need to raise our rates to get more revenue in? Is there something we can do on a level of service to kind of lower the cost? Just an area that we're looking at from a general fund standpoint. All right, before I move on to the other funds, since I know the general fund is kind of the big topic, I'm going to pause for a second. Does anybody have any general fund topics, questions, thoughts that they'd like to discuss before we move on?
Anybody have comments?
Go ahead.
One thing that stands out to me is the increase in public safety in the police department. With the latest contract with the union and everything, looked like $500,000 over the last couple of years increase, so that's driving the throwing on a whack that 60-30 ratio you talked about. I think that's just something we're going to have to address one way or the other.
No doubt.
It's not a sustainable model going forward.
It's personnel costs. After COVID, the cost of people went up tremendously. Quicker than, it's in all industries. It went up very quick. Revenues went up, but not to the point of what personnel has cost. And to keep, to get and keep people that are qualified for the jobs, you got to pay within that range, and the ranges have gone up. And it's not just a little bit either. Those ranges, when I started selling old, it's like I remember when, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, how to get that under control, and eventually it is about how many personnel you have in different departments.
Yeah, not that anybody isn't worth what they're earning. I don't mean that at all.
No, I don't. I know.
Somehow we're going to have to look at alternatives to the way we deliver services.
Yeah.
So I don't have the answers, but it's just a reality we're going to face. So.
And it's not just,
we knew at that time it was not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not just us though. It's across the state of Michigan. It is very much across the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Any others on the general fund before we move on? All right, like I said, that's the biggest one, so that one's probably was the most time consuming. These other ones we're going to kind of blitz through, mostly because compared to years past, a lot of these are very consistent and very simple. So our other governmental funds are our major streets, local streets, and our street improvement village fund, and then our parks and recreation fund. Again, revenue trends in here. Major streets, you'll see a spike last year. That's because we got that $375,000 to do Pine Avenue. So again, a spike because of a federal grant. A little bit less this year than we projected 2 years ago. Again, biggest part of that is because Pine Avenue was so expensive that the amount of interest income, we earned a ton of interest income a couple years ago on the Major Streets Fund because we had saved up money for a few years. So we had that money to invest. Well, now that we have Pine Avenue and that, we approved it, $2 million project coming off the books. That's just less money to be able to invest. So we are seeing a decrease in the investment income there. Other than that, everything else is staying pretty consistent. You can see street improvement millage, the change from year, that was when we went from the 2.5 mils to the 3.5 mils. And other than that, it's been pretty consistent. Again, major streets, you're going to see this operationally, fairly consistent, a little bit higher operationally, just because we're doing a little bit more maintenance projects than we used to, but basically year over year, it's going to stay fairly consistent unless you have major capital projects. So that's your major spike in 2025 is Pine Avenue. Local streets, again, operationally, we're seeing more and more of an increase just because we are doing more and more street maintenance projects, and we have the money to do it. So far MDOT's revenue's been coming in, we've been able to use that money and actually do some street projects with it. And then same thing on the street millage, it is a huge impact because all 5 of our street projects were budgeted for in 2025 because that's when we signed the purchase order. So again, just as a reminder to the commission, even though we're not going to be doing a couple of those street projects until next summer, because we've signed the purchase order in this year's budget, it goes against this year's budget for budgeting purposes, and then it will get carried over to next year, so we don't have to re-budget for it because we've already got the purchase order signed in this budget year. So that's why you don't see any capital in 2026. We're going to be doing capital in 2026, and those projects have just already been allocated as far as 2025 goes. And then Parks and Rec, this is the one that is funded 100% through the community center grant. So dollar for dollar, every dollar we spend, we're getting reimbursed, and that goes through September of 2026. Questions for the governmental funds? Major Street Fund, again, this is more just as far as forward thinking goes. Once we get done with Pine Avenue, it's going to be interesting to see what that fund balance looks like, because that's a fund that, you spend 6, 7, 8 years saving, and then you buy a major project and then go down, and then save, kind of go down. We don't know yet what's going on at the federal level or the state level. We have had indications that there might be more money available sooner. So normally we have more years to plan for the next project. Fortunately, if we can get moved up in a rotation, if we can get it more frequently, that means we can do more projects. That also means we have to make sure we have money our side, because $375,000 is great, but it's a $2 million project. You still gotta have the other side. So it's just making sure that if anyone's looking at the major street budget or any, like the street budgets, and you might see a couple $1 million sitting there in fund balance and being like, why aren't we spending it? It's because when we do a project, we're not doing $100,000 projects, we're doing multiple $1 million projects. So we have to save for years to be able to afford it when our time comes in those funding cycles, so that we can jump on them and be able to get those match funds to do these projects. So just kind of making sure that once this project's done, we're making sure we have enough money in that fund so that the next time we do come up, and if we can come up earlier, we have the money to be able to jump on it, because they don't necessarily wait around for you to see if you have money. They basically say, money's available, can you do it? And if the answer is not basically an immediate yes, you get moved to the back of the line. So we just want to make sure we're positioning ourselves so that we can take advantage of those funds when those funds come available. We talked about it on the street projects for the street millage. It's more of a timing thing, but because the projects are going to be done before the money necessarily comes in, the street budget is going to probably have to borrow for a year or two from the general fund to be able to cover that until the millage comes in, because normally we do one street every 6 years, but because of the SRF funding, we're doing 5 streets basically in a year and a half. That basically means we're spending the money before we're necessarily getting the money, so we'll have to borrow the money until we get the money to pay in. So it's more of just kind of an accounting on the books thing, but just wanted to remind the commission that's something that we had already talked about and that we're going to do. We're continuing to monitor changes in MDOT funding and just road maintenance funding in general. There's been a lot of talk about, gas taxes and changes in there and changes in how MDOT's funding things and stuff. On the immediate horizon, we have no reason to think that our funding is going to change. We know that when changes happen at the state level and the federal level, eventually sometimes those trickle down. We've had a group in the state right now that's been very pro street funding. We've seen a lot of street funds lately. I hope that continues, but when changes happen there, you never know how that's going to trickle down, and you never know, just because the pot of money is there doesn't mean how they allocate it. It's always going to be the same year over year. So right now we're doing very well with our funding. We're getting, we've seen good increases the last couple of years, but we always kind of have that caveat of there is no necessarily guarantee tied to that. So we always want to be, we're doing what we can while we have it, but that's no guarantee we'll have that forever. So what do we do if that formula changes, if that funding changes? Just again, something to monitor long term. And then with the Parks and Recs program, I just put on here, again, we don't have to make a decision now because our grant runs through September 2026, but at some point we'll have to have the discussion of what do we see with that going forward? Are we just going to be done with it when the grant happens? Do we want to do it but in a reduced capacity? Can we piggyback on would the county be willing to take over some of it or help fund it? Or, I mean, can it be funded through other means? Are there other grants? Just at some point that discussion will have to be had again. Doesn't have to be today because we're still funded through September of next year, but at some point that will be a conversation to be had. Component units, and I put that on there just to pander to the crowd that's here tonight. doesn't hurt though. So our DDA and our library. Again, revenue trends for the most part consistent, spike year, and that was the extra contribution that first year for the library one, and then that third year was a very generous private one-time donation from the state. So again, not a consistent funding model, but a nice little spike there last year. From the DDA standpoint, this one's actually one of the ones that looks a little wonky, and that's partially just because we're talking about smaller dollars, so changes can make a bigger difference. The 2022 number, that was for the engineering for the street projects that the DDA paid for out of their funds, or a portion of our parking lots. So that was kind of the spike in 2022, and then you're seeing kind of increases in, especially the personnel costs. That's the personnel costs for our guys to do the tree removal and replacement project. So again, we're doing that internally, so some of that, it's still a capital project, but it's personnel because our guys are doing it. So it's the same money, just presented a little bit differently. So, and then on the library side of things, again, for the most part, very, very consistent year over year. Again, like I said, with the general fund library, same thing. They've done a very good job operationally, keeping their operational costs fairly consistent. When they're seeing increases, they're doing a very good job at offsetting it through other means and not seeing major increases in operating. They're, like everybody else, it's personnel. We saw a personnel dip in 2024. That's when the library took a full-time position and split that into 2 part-time positions, and that had some very immediate savings because, 2 part-time positions at a lower pay scale without fringe benefits, much more of a savings. But like everybody else, personnel costs just keep going up as people move up the ladder and get COLAs. So, and as we get into this, the library, I'll kind of do that one first. We just talked about it. Really, the big question of the library is not operational. There's this capital. They are currently not funding for depreciation and are not intentionally setting aside any money for future capital projects. If they have savings every year, that does go into their fund balance, which can be used for capital, but they're not dedicating money to capital year over year, which the last couple of years there haven't been major capital projects outside of the air conditioner that just broke and they had to fix, and we were thankful we had enough in the reserves for the library to pay for that one. But sitting down with Jim and Dave and Lori and all of us talking about what does the future hold, there's about $500,000 worth of capital improvement projects needed at the library in the next 5 to 6 years. So that's not necessarily a small number, and again, currently not funding for it. So, we're always going to be very aggressive with grants and seeing what we can get to grant aid for. We need to talk about other potential options though if grants aren't available as far as fundraising. I know the Friends Group does a very good job at doing stuff from a programming side of things, but if that's something that them or another group can help get some extra funds for, and then do we eventually have to talk about a debt millage to be able to pay for some of the improvements at the library? I mean, nobody wants more taxes. I'm not advocating for it, but it is an option that's out there and something that needs to be, that's an option to consider. So, also for the library, just revenue sources and the sustainability. No reason, again, right now to think that there's not, but we've seen kind of goofy things happen with penal fines over the years, and, you know, if one day those go away, I mean, they're already dropping, but there's still a significant portion of the revenue. The millage that goes, the countywide millage that gets back to the library has been increasing more than even the city millages have recently. That's been great. That's helped offset some of the offsetting costs, but if that ever stabilized or started to decrease, what would that do? So again, if revenues stay the way they are, operationally, the library is doing very well at being able to move some things around and be able to absorb the impacts of increasing expenses. So as long as nothing changes, nothing to worry about, but if something changed with one of their major revenue sources, what would that look like? Where would that come from? Then our enterprise funds, State Street Plaza I've added here. We're not going to really talk about that one too much because it's basically just a rollover budget from last year. And then we've got transit and then our 3 utility accounts. Again, increases here. Transit's been going down because we lowered the millage and because their revenue shares have been going down. So something very much to monitor. And then the other utility accounts have increased with increased utility rates. Again, I'm not going to really spend much time on State Street. The balanced budget will keep, and it's kind of status quo until something changes. Transit, again, from an expense standpoint, fairly consistent year over year. Nothing that really jumps out too much from an expense standpoint. There's sides more of the revenue side that's kind of changing, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Wastewater, same thing, a little more operational. Wastewater has done a lot more, you know, again, that's their oldest building. Buildings are old, there's a lot more maintenance, a lot more work that needs done. So a lot of that is just increases in just maintenance parts and maintenance costs to keep things up and running. And then chemical costs and stuff are just crazy. I hate every time we have a bid opening because those costs are just insane how much those are going up. So mostly on the operational side, again, personnel side, no changes in personnel. Their operational cost is really just maintaining the building. And then water distribution, again, very consistent year over year. Nothing really jumping out here from an operational standpoint. The increase in operations, most of that is the increase for GAWA. So the GAWA goes up every year, has historically gone up every year 5%. So that means what GAWA charges the water distribution budget goes up 5%. So that's really our major increase. Other than that, things have stayed pretty stable in that fund as well. And then a little bit of an increase in our refuse collection. I should have taken a little bit more notes on this. I know there's a couple of one-time things, and if Dave, maybe you know a little bit more. This year there was just a couple of one-time costs that had to be added to the budget that increases the operational budget a little bit, but just a little bit. Again, for the most part, consistent year over year with a little bit of an increase in the operation for a couple of one-time things this year. Our capital projects for our enterprise funds, wastewater, we have the lift station 16 and the lift station roofs. We are planning on bonding those projects. We are in the preliminary discussions of that. Right now, between those two combined, it's a $1.7 million project. I'm guessing probably we're going to be a little bit north of that yet. But again, we're working on bonding that project. And then the other big project would be the lab renovations. Again, we talked about this a little bit at goal setting. We've got people on site. We've had more accurate estimates and a little bit more of, I think, a game plan for what we're going to do there. But that's really our big capital project for this year is the lab renovation over at wastewater. And then we have some smaller projects in wastewater and water. And then for transit, we do have requested for 2 bus replacements. If we get a grant for that, if we get the grant, we will move forward with that. If we don't get the grant, I believe the plan is to definitely not do 2, maybe 1, or maybe even just hold up here and see where transportation funds go and if those get stabilized before we look at replacing those. So our enterprise funds, again, transportation with revenue falling, We've been very fortunate over the last few years. Pretty much the entire fleet has been replaced with almost 100% MDOT funds. That wasn't the case for a very, very long time. We don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. If that does stop happening moving forward, and all of a sudden we start having to replace our buses and vans through local dollars and not MDOT dollars, what does that look like? They have a fairly healthy fund balance right now. So again, I wouldn't say it's an immediate. They could, they have enough money to replace a good portion of their fleet today, but not their entire fleet. Not that it would all need done at one time, but just what will that look like if, we've been kind of spoiled the last few years with on the transit side of things with a lot of funds. But what would that look like if that goes away? And then upgrades at the wastewater plant, if we don't get SRF funding, obviously we didn't get funded the first time, we're going after it again. We'll see if we have a better shot this time. I'm hopeful. But if we don't get it, what does bonding look like? The difference between having to bond on the open market and getting a low interest loan through the SRF program is fairly significant. I think the SRF rate right now is like 2%, and the projected bond rates right now, if you're on the open market for a government, is like 4.5. So it doesn't sound like a huge gap, but it really is when in terms of the scope of a project over a 20-year period and what we could do and what we can afford. So, and then revisiting our 5-year rate plan for our water and sewer rates. I'll jump to that slide real quick. Based on the original 5-year plan that we did a couple years ago, what's on the left is what we would have, is what is currently. What's on the right would be what we would increase. So there'd be no increase to the water and sewer SRF, a slight increase to the refuse readiness to serve, and then increases to the usage rate for water and sewer. I think we're on track. I think that this is something we can talk about at future meetings too. I think we're okay if we want to just stick status quo. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think that just based on again, we made these assumptions a couple of years ago. We made these assumptions for our readiness to serve rates for water and sewer, assuming that we would get the SRF funding for both with no loan forgiveness. On the water side, we got funded with some loan forgiveness. On the sewer side, we didn't get any funding. So we're sitting way better on the water side, not way better, but better on the water side than we originally thought, but worse on the sewer side than we originally thought, just based on how we've gotten funded. So something to possibly consider, and we've started some running preliminary numbers and seeing what makes sense would be, do we reduce the water readiness to serve a little bit and raise the sewer readiness to serve a little bit so that it's the same overall cost, but that would help us with the potential increases in what going out to bond if we don't get this SRF funding. That would put us in a better position to bond a bigger project on the sewer side than what they are right now. Even if we leave the rates the same, we're still able to bond. We just probably wouldn't be able to do as big of a project as if we swapped those around a little bit. So just, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping it the way it is, but there could be an opportunity that would be virtually no impact to the residents, that could position ourselves just a little bit better for potential bond projects in an area where sewer is the much heavier need right now because they didn't get the SRF funding and because of the way that plant, the upgrades that are needed there versus what we have on the water side right now. So again, something to think about, something we can talk about at a future meeting as well. If we decide just to stick with our 5-year plan, again, I don't think that's a bad thing. But there could be an opportunity to shift some things around where the residents would see virtually no impact, but it would position us a little bit better. And then last one is internal service funds. This is a pass-through, so we don't technically budget for this, but it is important because of the capital projects for the internal service fund. Here are our projected capitals for this year for $216,000. The biggest thing with the internal service fund, and here I think it's the only question, is so the way that we're funding in our motor pool right now, we can account for about $200,000 to $250,000 worth of capital projects, motor pool replacements each year. That's the target that doesn't make all the other departments have to pay a higher amount of internal service charges. For the next couple of years, our capital replacement plan, it fits within that $200,000 to $250,000 range. So for the next couple of years, I think our budgets can be stable and not we wouldn't have to do anything with it. However, at some point, we have a couple of major motor pool assets that are going to be significantly higher than that $250,000 number. When those come up, our main choices of how to fund those would be to increase the charge that we charge all of our departments, which is obviously going to have an impact on every department. I mean, regardless if they use that particular asset, because that's kind of the whole point of a motor pool fund, is that you're paying in, you don't necessarily use every asset, but you pay in a percentage based on the total number of assets that you use. So one fund doesn't get stuck with a major bill when that particular asset comes available, or comes up for renewal. So again, as long as we're staying within that 250,000, our funding method is good. But once we get to those bigger projects, either the general fund would have to use some of its capital to fund that project, or we'd have to raise rates to all of our departments, which include our general fund departments. So either way, you're going to have an impact on your general fund costs when those projects come up. So I think that the next one that we have that's bigger than that is the High Ranger, and I think that that's about 4 years out, maybe 5 years out. So again, not a next year thing, but the motor pool fund has been almost completely depleted as far as their reserves over the years. So there isn't that kind of savings account or that safety net to fall back on when they have to go over that $250,000 threshold. Really, our only option would be to either fund it through charging more in internal service funds or a general fund contribution, which, as we just talked about, general fund dollars are very competitive, especially on the capital side. We're already strapped, so that would just put us in another position. So that's really the big internal service fund concern moving forward. That's what I got. That's it. So, like I said, I want to give a shout out to all the department heads. They've done a very good job over the last couple of years, preparing their budgets, watching their budgets, being very diligent, asking a lot of questions, learning about their budgets. And like I said, the things that they can control, they've done a very good job at keeping things very stable and keeping us on track. I think we're in a good position. I think there's obviously some questions moving forward. There are going to be some serious questions, but again, this is a lot more fun than it was 3-4 years ago. These questions are more philosophical, big picture. How do we better things, not how do we keep from sinking? So just things to think about, things to have more conversations about throughout the year, and really just kind of get a feel from you guys what direction you want us to go on a couple of these major topics so that we can run numbers and figure out what's feasible, what's doable, what we'd have to move around in order to make things happen.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Who has questions? Anybody? Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Curtis.
Appreciate it. We didn't have a motion? Oh, like a motion to receive is reported. Support. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we set a resolution to set a public hearing for May 13, 2025 at 6 p.m. for a review of proposed 2026 Elma City budget and related property tax millage rates. Also to set a special meeting for Tuesday, April 29, 2025, Tuesday, May 20, 2025 at 6 p.m. for additional review and proposal of the budget. If needed.
I move to set the public hearing.
I have motion support. Anybody comments or questions? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion is carried. We're going to skip the closed session for now. First, we'll do the appropriations. Anybody want to pay the appropriations? Good motion support. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Now we'll do the commissioner comments and then the invitation to the public. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the commission, I guess let's do the commissioner comments first. You want to start out?
Just thanks, Curtis, for all your hard work, and I appreciate especially the portions where you can get a little creative in terms of adding value but not increasing costs. I think that's appreciated by a lot of the citizens, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis, and department heads for putting together a balanced budget and presenting it in a way that was easy to understand. I appreciate that. And thank you to the library friends for their presentation and all your hard work to keep our fabulous library going. And happy Library Month. It's April Library Month.
Every month is library.
I mean, I keep my sign up all year round. Okay, all right, well, just, thanks.
Roger?
Curtis, thank you. That's, budget presentation is always a major undertaking for this entire staff of this entire city, and appreciate the hard work goes on it. And the entire Allman family thanks the library for that.
Sonia?
Just thank you for that report. It's a lot of work that you did, and it was, like Roxanne said, understandable. So thank you, and thank you for the Elma Library. You do.
Michelle?
The same. Thank you, Curtis, and thanks to the library. You know, I stopped in there to see Lori for a minute, and boy, there's a lot of kids that run in there at 10 o'clock and are very excited to have their story time, and it was cute to see them all excited to get in there and see the teacher and present it, so it was fun to see. So thank you for all your hard work.
Pretty much the same, yeah. No, I really appreciated, both presentations, but thank you, Curtis, and all the staff. I think that did a really good job helping us see the challenges ahead as well, and the choices that are gonna have to be made to make some things work. That was just really well organized, and I appreciate the library and their presentation. It was fun to see Scott Messing and Roger in there. That was a fun video a couple of years ago.
Weren't you in there too, Greg?
Greg was up there.
Yeah. In the line there.
Yeah, your hair was a lot darker, but.
A lot of things are different.
No judgment.
Thanks for noticing that.
That's not what I meant, but I thought it was you, but I didn't want to assume.
Yeah. Sarah?
No, I have nothing.
Just as you pass those dates coming up, we can handle some of, if you have questions or want us to look into things, we can handle those during our regular meetings. We have a couple before then. We put those special meetings in there just in case we needed to do that. And like Curtis did mention, we might want to take a look at those utility rates and maybe moving some of that around to get some of the projects done at the wastewater plant. That is imperative. So we might want to talk about that, but not do the overall, it'd be a no net change for the rates, but move those around a little bit. And then just, keep in the back of your mind that, we're okay this year. And like we talked about as staff, we were able to balance it, but personnel costs are concerning. So I just wanted to say that, but no, thanks to all the staff and everyone to come together to bring, at least right now, proposed budget to you.
Appreciate that. And I would echo all the comments, the library presentation, Curtis, yours and your team, both great. Thank you for the information. And so with that, we'll open up the floor to public comments. If anybody'd like to address the commission, please go to the podium, state your name.
I'd like to just thank the...
You gotta go to the podium, Gary. You know that. Everybody wants to see you on camera.
Yeah. We are very fortunate to have our board we have up here for our city. They do marvelous things. I work with them a lot on the library and other things, and I just want to say thank you. You really care about our city, and we're really appreciative of the work you're doing for us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta add that we appreciate all the work that citizens like you do to help us all out. I mean, it's all a group effort, so it's not just this board, it's all the citizens' involvement too that is very important. Anybody else care to go to the commission? Not hearing any, so with this, we'll be going into closed session for discussion. Let's see, I should read this. We will request to go into closed session to conduct, consideration of a request from the city manager to conduct a closed session which is permitted under section 8D of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268, regarding the purchase or lease of real property. And we do not expect to take any action when we come out of closed session, so you don't have to wait around for anything. I mean, you're free to if you'd like to, but we want to get all the public business ahead. Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. With that, we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So, support.
Motion support. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Bear? Yes. Commissioner Gibson? Vice Mayor Harrington? Yes. Commissioner Fitz? Yes. Commissioner Warnick? Yes. Commissioner Allman?
Yes.
Mayor Mapes?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, we're going.